Entering the atmosphere in T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast from OmegaMetroid.com. My name is Andy Spiteri and I am not joined by Dakota Lasky or Doomino Crossing, but instead I have my friend Andrew Elmore joining me on the podcast today. Andrew, what's up, man? Thanks for hanging out with me today.
And you'll never see them again. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. Thanks for having me.
I don't know. We might not see them again. I don't know. We'll see how this goes.
Oh, no.
If we hit it off, I mean, maybe we'll,
I didn't know this was an interview. All
yeah. Right. No, so thanks for hanging out with me. This is our second podcast together, actually.
True.
Ironically, our first podcast together was about Doom, not our co-host who goes by the moniker of Doom, but Doom 64 over on the Flashback 64 podcast. So our pal Gooey Fame introduced us, and I was like, I'm really happy that we got together because I was really looking for someone to talk about Castlevania with, and like nobody had played Dawn of Sorrow specifically, which is the game that I really wanted to talk about, and I was like, Goo, have you played this game, man? Like, come on, like. Come on the show with me. And he's like, no, but Andrew has. You should message Andrew because I know he's a Castlevania guy. And here we are today.
It's great because I just played it for the first time.
Really?
The Dominus Collection, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that is really interesting. I'm really excited to see how your versus, because I have a lot of childhood, I played it when it first came out, so I have a lot of love for it. But I am interested to see how we're thinking about it in the modern context, or I guess in modern day context. So yeah, we're talking Castlevania today. Inspired by Metroid has indeed returned. It's been a long layoff. In fact, the last Inspired by Metroid game we did was back in early 2024 when Prince of Persia came out, which was also awesome. So looking forward to this one, man. And Dominus Collection just dropped not that long ago, so it's a topical show for once too. So there you go. Before we get into everything, though, for everybody that maybe is kind of unfamiliar with who you are, what you do, tell us about yourself. Tell us some of the projects. I know kind of what you're all about here, and I think some of our listeners are going to be like, "Holy crap!" when they realize some of the stuff that you've worked on there. So, yeah, I mean, the floor is yours, man. That. Oh yeah, they're definitely a Dak would be particularly excited.
No, my name's Andrew. I make the video games. I spent the last 5 years at Bungie as a visual designer there before getting laid off, and since then I've just been doing UI and music composition on a freelance basis since then.
Awesome, and you've worked, like I said, you've worked on some pretty cool stuff. I mean, a lot of time at Bungie, but I'm also taking a look at some of your portfolio, which everybody should go and check out, by the way. It's over at elmore.design. There's some cool stuff over here, man. And a little bit of everything, some logos, some menus, a little bit of concept art, really kind of rocking stuff.
Yeah, I've had to learn a little bit about a lot of things to stay afloat,
a jack of all trades, so to speak. And so I see here, I hope you don't mind me saying, I see here you've worked on some Destiny 2, which is, I mean,
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, a pretty, not a bad game to have on your resume. Our other co-host who's not here today, Dak, is a huge Destiny guy. I am sure he'd love to pick your brain about stuff if you ever feel like talking to him about Destiny, because sure. Yeah, that's his. When we started the podcast, he got into Destiny right after and was like, Can we make a Destiny show? And I was like, no, we can't do that.
Never been done before. It'll never work.
Yeah. But yeah, so thank you again for hanging out with me today. I'm looking forward to this, man. And you know what? Really quickly, actually, we should follow up on something. Because you and I were chatting, and we're like, let's get to know each other a little bit here. What's your favorite Metroid games? And
here we go.
I was kind of impressed with your list, because I had said to you something like, in my experience, most people's top 5 Metroid games are kind of the same, but in different order. Not you, man. You went full out. You're like, no. This is how we roll. This is what the top Metroid games look like. I appreciate that. You're an old school kind of a soul. Would that be fair to say?
I suppose so. I've been hearing that since I was like 3 or 4, so that makes sense.
Yeah, so like, I mean, the good thing is, you know, both of us, I think, kind of had Super Metroid as the topper at the list, but
it's hard not to. Yeah,
yeah.
I would love to pretend that I have like a really cool, like, you know, that's what I'm looking
underground taste, yeah,
or something like that. But unfortunately, I am unable to pretend to be too cool for Super Metroid. I just can't.
It's undeniable, but you know what, like because I showed you my list and I thought it was kind of basic. I had Super Metroid, I had Metroid Prime, I had Metroid Dread. You know, I think the most I don't know, maybe like egregious thing is I have Samus Returns on my list, and I was like, okay, maybe this is a hot take, and we've got your list here. We've got Metroid, we've got Metroid 2. Like, I love that, man.
Yeah, I love those games. I think I posted about this the other day. It's like, this feels really weird to say about, you know, like, not like a flagship Nintendo franchise, but one of their like second tier, I guess, big franchises, to be like, yeah, this is underrated. But those first 2 Metroid games, I feel like, still don't get maybe quite as much credit as maybe I feel like they are due.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I tended to agree, actually. And when I started this podcast, I was kind of the mind where I was like, you know what, Zero Mission completely replaces Nestroid to me. And as we started playing Nestroid a little bit more, I was like, no, it doesn't. This is like actually like really awesome. And Metroid 2 in particular, I've been playing probably like 50 hours in the last month or so, just doing a guide for that game, and that game is also incredible. So I was kind of like, all right, I think this is gonna be a good time. I think it's gonna be a good time.
Yeah, I distinctly remember sometime around like 99 or 2000 maybe, my friend at school, his older brother, worked at an electronics boutique, and I brought in a copy of Blast Core and traded that straight across the table for Metroid 2 on the Game Boy.
Wow.
And within like seconds of booting that thing up on a Game Boy Color in the car on the way home and cycling through the color palettes and stuff, I was like, okay, yeah, no, this was the right move.
Yeah.
I never regretted that.
I remember I was at like Calgary Comic Con in 2003 or 4 or something like that, and they were selling the little cartridge, the stickers like half ripped off, and I was like, okay, I really like Super Metroid, I like Nestroid, let's get this one, and yeah, never looked back after that. So yeah, that's really cool. But we are indeed here today to talk about an inspired by Metroid game, and so the Castlevania series is obviously iconic series, all pretty much at the same level as Metroid in terms of like laying the foundation for that, you know, what we know as the Metroidvania style. Dawn of Sorrow certainly was not like one of the pioneers in the Castlevania transition to the Metroidvania style. That was, you know, probably Symphony of the Night, although you could maybe argue Castlevania 2 was a little bit of that as well. But Symphony of the Night is certainly, you know, certainly the game I think a lot of people look at as like being the game in Castlevania. And I would probably include myself in that. Like, it's probably one of my, if not my favorite Castlevanias. Like, it's just like an awesome game. But I don't think, for my money, that Dawn of Sorrow and also Aria of Sorrow is too far behind Symphony of the Night in terms of like how awesome that game actually is. And have you played Aria of Sorrow before?
No.
So Aria of Sorrow and Dawn of Sorrow to me are kind of like, it's almost like they're an extension of the same game, so to speak. Like it's hard to almost differentiate the two. So a lot of like what you could say positive and negative about one game would also apply to the other game and vice versa. There are some differences, but generally speaking, I felt like those two games really kind of leveled up Castlevania for my personal fandom. And I remember like when I was a kid, Castlevania was just coming out like every year with these awesome titles on the Game Boy Advance and then the DS, and I was like, this series is awesome. Like I just like fell in love with the series back then, and like it no matter what, it was like every single year you got a new awesome game. You didn't have to wait very long for it. They had cool stories, and I think the one that really stuck out to me was the Sorrow series for very good reason. And we'll kind of get into what a lot of those reasons are, but I'm really interested to hear, like, playing Dawn of Sorrow for the first time in 2024. What's your takeaway? And maybe, like, while we're asking you the question, I'm putting you on the spot here, Andrew. What's your preferred style of Castlevania 2? Are you kind of like more the old school, like Simon whipping things, or kind of a new school Metroidvania, Alucard, that kind of style?
Yeah, I'm definitely more of the classic Vania kind of guy. I'm really big into like the first game and Rondo and Bloodlines and all that fun stuff. Those are some of my like very like nearest and dearest games to my heart. And up until this Dominus Collection release, the only like 2D Symphony-esque, quote unquote Igavania or whatever that I'd played was Symphony.
Mm-hmm.
I'd not played any of the GBA games or any of the DS games or anything like that. I've played the other console games that came afterwards, the PS2 and Xbox and the N64 games and all that stuff, but none of I played like an hour of Lords of Shadow. That's about it. But no, none of the follow-ups on the Symphony formula. So, I've played through Simon's Quest a few times. There's the X68000 Vampire Killer kind of has a little bit of that like branching pathway stuff. They play with that a little bit more in, Rondo and stuff like that. But yeah, no, so I've played through Symphony. But other than that, I think I was a little bit intimidated by the sheer amount of portable Castlevanias that I missed, and I think I was just like, after playing through Symphony, I was like, that was incredible, but I don't know if I need like, six more of these or however more of these. Yeah. It just sounded daunting. I guess hadn't really occurred to me that they weren't all going to be, enough data to fill up a compact disc. But yeah, so I didn't, between that and the fact that I just really, the GBA sound chip and I do not get along very well. That thing is like a power drill in my ears. It's fingernails on a chalkboard really bad for me most of the time. It's like I've listened to these soundtracks before, but I haven't sat down and played through any of those games, and that is kind of the main reason I didn't when the Advanced Collection came out as well. And realistically, I probably would have skipped the Dominus Collection if not for the fact that we got a new old M2 Castlevania remake in there with Haunted Castle Revisited, which is the first thing that I sat down and played through and had absolute blast with. We haven't had one of those since they made the Adventure Rebirth, and what was that, like 09 or something like that? So I was really, really excited about that, and it is fantastic. And I do really, really recommend playing through that. But unfortunately, I did also immediately follow that up with Dawn of Sorrow. And then as soon as that was done, rolled directly into Portrait of Ruin. And then as soon as that was done, I'm now like a third of the way through Ecclesia. But I'm actually glad that you brought this up, because after I finished Portrait of Ruin the other night, I saw the little like crown icon on the game selection screen in the Dominus Collection menu. And I was like, wait a minute, that's not on Dawn of Sorrow. I must have missed something. So I went back into Dawn of Sorrow and realized that I got a second fake out ending. So I still had a good like hour and a half of that game left to go explore and have fun with, which was neat. Coming back to that, then after completing Portrait of Ruin and going back and cleaning up Dawn of Sorrow again, getting a kind of like immediate, A/B switch between those two things. It's very interesting to see kind of like the end game state of both of those games compared next to each other. But yeah, dude, I had a blast. It's very, very hard to put these down. I get it now.
Yeah. I think like, so I really, really like Portrait of Ruin. I'm still actually kind of schmucking around in Portrait of Ruin, waiting to finish everything up. I think Ecclesia is really great, but like I think for me, Dawn of Sorrow is definitely the crown jewel of this, and I think it's down to the soul system gimmick. And for anybody that doesn't know, and this started with Aria of Sorrow on the Game Boy Advance. It's a really, really clever idea, but very simple in its premise. When you defeat an enemy, you have it's like a 5 to, I don't know, like 10%. It varies, but you have a small chance of getting a soul that an enemy drops, and you automatically absorb it. And if you get a soul, that gives you an ability based on that enemy. So for example, if you defeat like an axe armor, and you get a soul, you can throw an axe. If you defeat a imp, you can summon an imp. If you defeat like a, I don't know, like a zombie, you might get like a stat boost or something like that, right? But like every single enemy in the game has a soul that you can collect, and some of them are crucial for your abilities, and some of them are, you know, just kind of more augmentations that might help you. It's almost sort of Pokemon like in the way that like you kind of want to collect every single one of them, and like I don't really think there's any, like, you get like a ring or something like that if you do collect all the souls, but it's really just for your own kind of personal satisfaction. So it's a really, really great idea, simple idea, but it adds like a ton of replay value to the game. It gets you to explore places that maybe you wouldn't necessarily need to, and it kind of is like a cool idea because like in a lot of Metroidvanias, and I've kind of complained about this with Metroid before, instead of like having like one more, like your 85th missile expansion up in the top corner of wherever, now you're just like, okay, like there's one iron golem up there, I need the soul, and I'm gonna go get it. So it's like kind of a cool reward to have. So when that was introduced in Aria of Sorrow, I was like, this is awesome, this is like incredible. And then I think they just like extrapolated on that in Dawn of Sorrow as well, and kind of had even more stuff that they brought to the table to enhance that, so you could fuse souls with your weapons and stuff like that. It's a very, very cool system, and very, like, it's a deep system, but I feel like it's really easy to understand like right away. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting because they expand your verb set in different ways. Some of them are different attacks. All of the classic like Castlevania sub weapons are in there as souls that you can equip. And what I ended up missing out on and not finding out about until doing a little bit of research after the fact and going through and watching some speedruns and stuff like that was just how much mobility I had missed out on in terms of the hippogriff is not like a random drop, but I missed out on that. And I think the Black Panther is one that lets you just like zoom on by real fast. And just those two things combined open up the flow of that game and turn it into 2D jet set radios so fast.
Yeah.
Like it's like watching someone speedrun Ninja 5.0 at that point. It's incredible. It's so, like, I don't know, just satisfying to watch Soma's character model just zoom all over the screen.
Yeah.
All that stuff unlocked. And I was just like, that's very cathartic to see after all the time that I spent, running around not doing that.
That's actually like one of my, I have like two big critiques of this game, and actually I have one big critique but then one small one. My only small one is like you get the Black Panther soul so late in the game. I wish you kind of got it a little bit earlier, but yeah, when you get that, you're just zooming around like Sonic the Hedgehog. It's incredible. It's just like an awesome feeling, and you could like take out other enemies. The soul system just like really kind of customizes how you can play. Like you can be a tank, you can be a magic user, you could be a power user, you could kind of be whatever you want to be. So it's just a really great and crafty system in order to play the game with. There's there's 4 different types of souls. So there's like ability souls, and those are the ones that are equipped like all the time. So your double jump, you press L to like do the big jump into the air, all that other kind of stuff.
Yeah, all of the passive stuff that's just kind of like abilities that you have that you can turn on and off, like
swim in water,
various upgrades and stuff in Super Metroid kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like this would be like the screw attack or the speed booster, that kind of thing. But you got like a ton of they're called bullet souls, and these are the ones that kind of like attack enemies. So like you can summon 3 fireballs if you have the Hellfire soul. You can shoot a stream of water if you got the Merman, etc., etc. There's like a ton of these different souls.
So many.
You have enhanced souls, and these are kind of like, I don't know, like your stat boosting souls or like your attribute boosting souls, for example. So if you've got
temporary buffs,
it kind of, yeah, like there's some where like you can restore HP gradually, or you breathe in toxic gas and it doesn't damage you. Some of them just raise your strength, some of them raise your luck. So those types of souls are available as well. And there's guardian souls, and these ones are kind of like stat boosting as well, but a little differently. The Black Panther, like we were just talking about, like that lets you zoom back and forth. You can summon enemies. You can reduce the speed of falling is another big one. There's like there is so many different things that you can do to customize how you play this game. And it's really kind of like I remember playing Symphony of the Night the first time, and I was like, man, this is awesome. You can switch between like swords, like all these different weapons. It felt like you had a little bit more customizability. Is that a word?
Yeah.
Customizability with Alucard. And so I was like, I really like this. And I liked having the whip, but like it's cool to have those different options. And I feel like the Sorrow series just like takes that and runs with it to laps the field with that, actually, because they and Dawn of Sorrow in particular gives you the ability, you can still collect all these different weapons, but you can fuse your souls with your weapons to create like really powerful weapons as well as your powerful souls. I think that's slightly what gives Dawn of Sorrow the edge for me over Aria of Sorrow, is I really like that mode, or I really like that idea as well.
So I totally forgot about that after it was introduced. I also forgot that there were like vendors and stuff at the beginning. Mm-hmm. So I went through almost all the way to the end without ever engaging with any of that, because I am a silly and stupid man.
Oh, no. Well, it probably made you a better player for it, though.
I guess? I don't know.
Maybe.
Something like that.
So I do want to talk. I said I had a critique that I want to get it out of the way, so that we could talk.
Rip
about
that Band-Aid off, man. Let's go.
So if you have played like any Metroidvania, like Symphony of the Night, even like Circle of the Moon or Harmony of Dissonance, even Aria of Sorrow, you probably look at the art style, you're like, wow, that is just absolutely breathtaking. It's the name of the artist is escaping me off the top of my head, but those like pre-renderings, those drawings just look absolutely incredible. And then you get to Dawn of Sorrow, and they have replaced that with like the most generic looking like anime style characters, only in cutscenes, but it just looks like really bad when you put them side by side. I think at the time, everybody, like every reviewer, was kind of dumping on that, and rightfully so. Like it doesn't look very good. It's just like a downgrade. Like if you were to look at the box, like the cover box for Aria of Sorrow, and then look at the cover box for Dawn of Sorrow, like they're not even close. Like they just look so much, like Aria of Sorrow just looks so much cooler.
Is that the one that has the box art inside the box art tilted at about a 15-degree angle?
I don't know, but it looks sweet.
You know what I'm talking about? Where it's just like the greatest hits art is just like a JPEG of the actual normal box art inside it. Hold on, I'll find it.
Oh, here we go. Ayami Kojima, by the way, is the artist of that classic.
I didn't know that she did the other ones. Okay.
Yeah, she did like all those awesome Castlevania arts you've ever seen, like with Alucard with the sword, like that's her. It looks odd in like the classic image of Soma with the sword upside down. Like that's what I'm talking about. Like that looks awesome. Unfortunately, the Dawn of Sorrow artwork, it definitely leaves you a little bit wanting. You get used to it as the game goes on, and I think it improves when you get to Portrait of Ruin. But I think by the time that they got to Order of Ecclesia, they're like, everybody hates this. Let's just go back to the classic style, which looks like just a million times better. So that's probably my biggest critique about Dawn of Sorrow is they made a needless change from the art style when there really wasn't any need to, you know?
All right. I didn't know that she had worked on the previous portable ones because, again, I haven't really spent any time with them at all. So I mostly know her from like the 90s and 2000s console Castlevanias. But
that's my critique.
Yeah. I thought they were kind of going for a little bit of a like the cover art for Dawn of Sorrow, like the key art there, the character designs and stuff like that look very much like what I think just successful commercial animation looked like in the 2000s in terms of like, I don't know, westernized anime a little bit.
Yeah. Like,
you know, it's a little bit of that like Saturday morning animation studio in Burbank doing something that looks vaguely Japanese kind of heat on it. I don't know.
Pretty much. Like, and I know why they did it. Like I get it, but it's such a downgrade that like that's kind of the biggest thing that Aria of Sorrow has over Dawn of Sorrow for me. But the silver lining is that you really only notice it during cutscenes, and there's not a ton of cutscenes in this game. And as you play, you do get more accustomed to it. But every time I start Dawn of Sorrow, it is jarring because typically I'll have played Aria of Sorrow not that long before I replay Dawn of Sorrow, which was true again in this case. I played Advanced Collection like last year. Yeah, you look at Soma in particular, you're just kind of like, ugh. Ugh. But only in cutscenes. I think his sprite actually still looks pretty cool, so I can live with that.
Yeah, the sprite work across the board, I think, is still pretty good. There's a lot of almost a needless amount of animation frames in some cases, and it's great.
Like the actual sprite work of enemy and monsters and stuff just is like top tier in this game. Like it looks so incredible. Like all the different monster varieties and enemy types that you can fight, like that is really, really cool. So yeah, it's pretty easy to overlook that flaw of the game, but I wanted to shout that out. But other than that, like, yeah, this is like a contender for my favorite Castlevania, and I think it's one of the best like Metroidvanias that I've played, and I've played a lot of Metroidvanias, and I'd easily say Dawn of Sorrow is like a top 5 one for me. And there's so much cool stuff about it, like, and I guess we could start in a couple different places. I really love, let's start with the story, I guess maybe. I really love the idea of like modern Castlevania, even though it still feels like retro. You got your swords and it's very like classic European feeling, but like there's just something cool about like the story taking place in like the year 2030, whatever it's taking place in. It's like, okay, this feels a little bit fresh, a little bit modern.
The moment I picked up a 9mm handgun in a Castlevania game, I just had to like stop and just turn the Steam Deck to my wife and be like, what am I playing?
That's a great weapon too. I loved having that. But yeah, it's just like it's a weird setting and a weird feeling. But I think it's really, really cool because it's like I really love the story of Castlevania. Like it's simple, kind of hokey sometimes, but like it's just, I don't know, there's something just classic about it that really appeals to me. I love the idea of like Belmont's fighting Dracula over the centuries. Like it's just like good stuff, you know? It's just classic good storytelling. But I really, really like the idea that this new character, Soma Cruz, who you play as, is kind of like an everyman, and you're like, what is this guy's deal? Like, why is he important? And you kind of find out in Aria of Sorrow, he is the reincarnation of Dracula, because Dracula has been officially once and for all defeated in the year 19... Do you remember Dracula being defeated in 1999? I think I missed that on the news.
Yeah, it kind of got overshadowed by something happened a couple years later, but you know, it's...
Everybody was worried about Y2K.
That was a bit more of an American tragedy, I think.
Well, so Dracula's done. He's dead. He's defeated, and Julius Belmont is the one that finally does it. So Julius Belmont may in fact be the greatest Belmont of all, because he has officially killed Dracula. Or so we think. So Soma is now like the reincarnation of Dracula, but he's still Soma, which is a really cool idea. So he's kind of fighting against his fate, fighting against his destiny in order to prevent the world from having a Dark Lord. And it's a really cool setting, cool story. And Dawn of Sorrow, I think in particular, has like this really awesome plot where there's this like cult, and they're like, well, if you're going to reject your destiny as the new Dracula, I've got 2 other candidates that are going to embrace
my own Dracula.
I love that stuff, man. Like, it's just like such a cool idea. And you know, this is a slight, it's not a slight, it's a big story spoiler. So like skip ahead about a minute if anyone out there is sensitive to this, but last warning. So at the end of the game, when you get like the true ending, you see that like one of the 2 candidates is actually like sacrificed the main bad guy in the game, and he's like, yeah, she doesn't need to be here anymore. She's just going to be a sacrifice for my power to like embrace my inner Dracula too. So it's just like a really cool story. I think Julius Belmont is a cool like Belmont character. I love that Yoko is there too. Like the Belnatus family is still kicking around in modern times, and they've got Genya Arikado. Gotta love Genya Arikado, a.k.a. the son of Dracula, Alucard, who is rolled up in a 3-piece suit and has a... I don't know why he needs to disguise his identity. I forget, but it's kind of goofy, but I love it as well. So it's just got like a really like cool cast of characters. Hammer, the great like military guy who loves Yoko. It's got like a good, I think, cast of characters and a really cool setting for a Castlevania game, and a cool premise as well.
Yeah, I didn't know how many, if any, of those people I was supposed to recognize already. So I was just kind of rolling with it, just letting it wash over me.
If you've played Aria of Sorrow, most of those characters are returning characters. In fact, I think all of them are returning characters. The cult guys are new. So the cult guys are new bad guys in this game. But and I mean, it doesn't really matter. Like, Yoko just kind of sells you. Both Yoko and Hammer just kind of sell you stuff, and Julius is. It's kind of cool because, like, Julius will keep on telling Soma, like, I like you, I'm gonna work with you, but if you turn into Dracula, brother, that's it, you're done. And I want to talk about Julius mode in just a second there, because you actually do get to, in fact, live up to Julius's promise there. But yeah, it's just like it's a cool setting, and I guess maybe to go from that, I think the castle itself is like really, really cool. It kind of has like a nice blend of those like classic areas that you want from a Castlevania game that you kind of like expect to see, but also like some new, like really cool ones as well. I have a few areas I feel like that stuck out to me. Was there like an area that when you were playing, you were like, this is cool. This is cool.
I don't know. I was kind of taking the whole thing in because, again, having only had Symphony to compare it to before, it was interesting because it was like, it was very clear that they had made several other games since then and were looking to try something else aesthetically over time. The way that you kind of see happen with like Mega Man stages over, the course of various sequels and whatnot. Whereas like in Symphony, you have a lot of places where they're very concerned with like keeping up the, I don't know, like a mental checklist of things that are like aesthetically castle-y. You've got a library and a lab and a dungeon and all that fun stuff. You've got caverns and whatnot. Whereas by the time you get to Dawn of Sorrow, it's a lot more abstract than that. Forgive me if I'm going to start mixing these up between the three of these games that I've now been playing all next to each other. But, things like demon guest houses and stuff like that. Like just a lot of names of places that are very... a little bit more like creative isn't the right word because I don't want to imply that the others weren't. It's more just like
I know what you're saying. It's like
in a way that I'm into. Like it's just vibes. There's no practicality here anymore.
Yeah, it's just like a cool, like different setting that maybe is part of a castle, but maybe it's not. But who cares? Like we're gonna put it in anyways.
Yeah, like aesthetically it works regardless, so it kind of doesn't matter, and I enjoy that. The layout of it is a bit strange mechanically, I feel, compared to at least the other ones that I've now played. I feel like Dawn of Sorrow is strange in terms of the ways in which save rooms and the fast travel rooms are laid out and organized and kind of spaced apart from each other. I feel like this is the one entry where they are not grouped together so often, and it made traversal kind of interesting because like one of the initial issues that I ran into with Symphony of the Night the first time I played it was that it was just way too easy compared to what I expect from something that says Castlevania on the box. And this is the case here as well, but because of the ways that some of those spaces were broken up and arranged, I felt like they were able to lean more into the difficulty being less about smaller scale, more like minute, focused.
I think I kind of know what you're like.
Less on the execution of the smaller like moment to moment things, and more about traversal and space navigation and like working on your own like routing and efficiency and just movement throughout any given area with a lot of respawning and flying enemies and stuff. And like for the most part, a lot of the enemies in this game are not attacking you so directly in as much as they're either moving around in preset parabolic pathways, or they just have a very simple AI routine that just says walk towards player and attack, and that ends up working really weirdly well in kind of a way that almost feels clumsy as you're running around the space, but I feel like it actually ends up landing more cohesively than it looks. Sorry, I realize this is off track from what we were talking about, but
no, I mean, like it's definitely like I feel like and that's a good point to bring up because like I would agree. Like I don't feel like this game is like it's not overly difficult, especially if you like you're kind of like upkeeping your souls and stuff like that. I do feel like most of the in like so classic Castlevania, like I played that game. God, now it's escaping me the name of the game that comes with the Dominus Collection, the 2D one.
Haunted Castle.
Yeah, Haunted Castle. So I played that game and I got my butt whooped. And like classic
The original one, yeah, it'll do that.
Yeah, like classic Castlevania to me is tough. Like it's almost too tough. Where I don't feel like this is too tough at all, but most of the difficulty I feel like kind of comes from like for me, for example, like I will be rushing to get somewhere and not taking the time with enemies' attack patterns to like slow down and take them out. And there's some enemies that are like difficult just no matter what you're doing. But the majority of the enemies I feel like you can like if you know their pattern, you can pretty much take them on with limited troubles. But I think that most of the trouble that you'll run into is like when you don't want to slow down and just eliminate every enemy one by one. And it's just like those little hits, because like the save rooms there's like a lot of save rooms, but some of them aren't necessarily close to other save rooms. So like there's kind of that grind you down a little by little, instead of like when you're playing classic 2D Castlevania, I feel like you can see an enemy and like, at least for me, like just get immediately from top health to no health, and like you're done, you know. That probably speaks to like how good or not good I am at OG like NES Castlevania, but I kind of see what you're saying there. It's laid out in like a, I don't know, it's laid out in a way that it's challenging like navigation wise, but still I feel like accessible. Like I feel like you might have a harder time playing Haunted Castle, but I think anybody could play Dawn of Sorrow and still be like, this is like sort of challenging, but not like nothing insurmountable.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of different tools in here that give you to help mitigate more of that difficulty as well. Mm-hmm. Just a lot of them were things that I didn't find naturally my first time through. But yeah, if you look up a game fact guide or something before you jump in, and make sure you don't miss any of that stuff early on. There's a lot of different souls and items and abilities and stuff you can pick up early on that will make moving around in the early game much easier. Much easier. Okay.
I want to shout out a few areas here. I feel like I'm going to start with this one. It's kind of basic, but I feel like I always look for this when I'm playing a Castlevania game, and that's the clock tower.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of like fighting Ridley in Metroid. It's just like you go into Norfair and they're like, clock tower, okay, death is probably near.
Yep.
It's just it's probably the hardest area in the game. Again, not like environmentally, just because you got spikes everywhere, you've got the Medusa heads flying at you everywhere. Very, very challenging, but always like my favorite area in every Castlevania to go to, I feel like. And I really actually liked, you mentioned the Demon Guest House. I really like that area as well. It's got like this weird music that's playing, like, and I don't know what's up with it, but it's kind of like comforting, but kind of sinister at the same time. You got like a bunch of maids and witches and stuff everywhere. It's just like a really quirky area that really works, I feel. And it's got that room where you have to make like a pathway for yourself. You can shuffle all these blocks or whatever, and
oh, that's right.
Yeah. It's like a puzzle. I forgot what the puzzle's called.
It's a 2D ashtray maze.
Yeah. So like it's just like a quirky area. I wanted to also shout out the Garden of Madness, which
yes,
I'm kind of like a sucker for like foresty levels in video games. Like in general, they're always like a big draw for me. So I don't know, something about like this like outrageous courtyard in the middle, like literally the middle of Dracula's castle, just I thought was really cool. And the other thing too, I think is a cool area, and like pretty much every area is awesome, to be honest. Like I could probably say something about all these. So the last one I'll say, I really think that the Dark Chapel is pretty cool. You got the bells, you got the ghost dancers, it's just like a really, really cool vibe. That one to me was very Symphony of the Night. Felt like something right out of Symphony of the Night, where some of the other areas like Demon Guest House or Lost Village, or even like, I don't know, even like the Abyss or whatever, like they feel like kind of unique to the Sorrow series. I like that kind of mix of like areas that you'd expect to see, like the clock tower, like the pinnacle, and then the new areas that come in too, like the other ones that we mentioned. Even like the condemned tower, I think is kind of a cool area as well. So I feel like every area kind of has like its own, like they're uniform enough that you're never going to feel like completely out of place, but they have their own kind of unique vibes and unique challenges and unique enemies as well. And which is kind of cool because like you have to go to all these areas to get all the souls too. So you're going to be pretty intimately familiar with all these different areas. So I think that the map itself just does like a really kind of good job of giving you a little bit of diversity of scenery, diversity of enemies.
And very tasteful use of limited applications of low poly 3D polygonal background elements using the almighty power of the Nintendo dual screen. I really, really like those.
I want to ask you actually. I kind of remember as a kid not being in love with some of the touchscreen additions that they made to this game, but I replayed it now on the Switch and I was like, you know what? This is totally fine. Like it's totally fine. There's a thing that you do in the game where after you defeat a boss, you have to seal it away, and you have to make like a little squiggle on your touch screen or whatever in order to do that. I remember at the time kind of feeling like I thought it was a little bit gimmicky, but I don't know. I was playing it here and I was like, it was almost charming now. It reminded me of doing that on my DS as a kid. What do you think about that? I guess having played it for the first time in 2024, gimmicky or eh?
It didn't really bother me. I didn't think a lot about it. I was just like, the first time one came up, I was like, oh, right, this was a DS game. And then I'd trace the thing with my finger and then I moved on. And then it wasn't until after I finished it and was looking into some more discussion about the game, both from when it was new and people talking about it now as they're revisiting it in the collection. And people hate that thing so much. And yeah. I guess I get it, but like I just didn't think about it that much. I was just like, okay, yeah, I trace a little pattern. Cool. Neat. I probably like mess it up a couple times when it gets a little more complicated at the end, but like it does show you in the animation when it comes up what the order is. So I just like, okay, do that again really quick.
And you can practice it too, like at any time. I will say, so I have fat fingers. Okay. So like I can't remember which boss it was. I think it was Paranoia, and it was like a grueling, it was a grueling battle, and I finally beat him, and then I messed up the seal, and I was like, oh, it's like I get it, but you're right. I was playing it now, and I was like, this is fine. Like you just use your finger. It's totally easy. I don't know. I kind of forgave like the touchscreen controls as I was replaying the Dominus Collection. It made me feel a little nostalgic for those days.
Yeah, and I know that they remapped the different like nodes on there to button presses as well if you want to turn it into like a little QuickTime minigame or something, but that almost seemed more complicated to me.
It was, yeah. Like I kept on actually, in the Dominus Collection specifically, I kept on hitting, I think it was R, in like the little arrow would come on that's kind of like your touchscreen little guy, I guess.
Yeah, the little cursor.
Yeah, a little cursor. That was the word I was looking for. And like every time I was just like, God damn it! Like I'm trying to fight someone here. Get out of here. So yeah, I thought that they did like a good job of kind of making it as easy to replicate though, like the touchscreen controls in Dominus Collection as they possibly could have. I don't know how else you could have done it. So I thought it actually worked quite well.
Yeah, I mean, I think if they just removed it entirely, I don't think people would have been too terribly upset. But
no.
Also, again, it was not something that I noticed at all, really, until hearing the uproar after the fact.
I want to talk about some of these bosses really quick, because I think that, once again, this game has awesome bosses and great sprite work for these bosses too.
Absolutely.
My goodness, who should we even start with? I feel like there's like a ton of like really quality bosses here. I'm gonna go down the list here of just like really cool bosses that I thought were just really fun. I want to start off with Bat Company. The fight itself I thought was like fine, like it was an okay fight, but I love the sprite work, like all these red bats making a bat and then a head and then a hand. Like I don't know, I thought it was like such a cool just boss because of like the shape shifting, like blood red nature of the bats itself. That one I feel like is always one that I really look forward to whenever I get there.
It was very like Looney Tunes, like swarm of angry bees forming a giant like fist to punch you in the face or whatever kind of thing. It was fantastic. The fact
I love
all
it.
like vibrant cartoon orange is also very, very good.
Another one that I always really enjoy is Gurgoth, who is like this big, almost looks like a toe with teeth, and he's got like, you can see his rib cage sticking out. He fires this ginormous laser at you.
Yes, okay, yeah.
It's one of the earlier bosses that you fight in the game. I always really like love the sprite work of him. He just looks like really shocking to me, like just this bloody, gross monster. I don't know, that and the laser attack I always just thought was really cool. His laser attack actually reminds me of like the Zero Suit Samus like Zero Beam Final Smash from Super Smash Bros. So I have a soft spot for that boss as well. One of them that I really like, and you've probably seen this guy in Portrait of Ruin, is Malphus, who is like this crow boss. He's kind of got he's like a dude with some crow wings, and he shoots out crows everywhere. It's a pretty difficult boss fight, and they turn him into a regular enemy in Portrait of Ruin, which I thought was cool because I really liked that sprite. Thought he looked really menacing. Let's see who else? Oh, I know who I got to shout out. I want to shout out, I actually think this is one of the tougher boss fights in the game, the Zephyr boss fight. I think I said that right. And you fight the Zephyr in the clock tower, actually. So Death is not there, and you fight this guy instead. And it's kind of a tough fight because like he can stop time, and he's throwing knives at you. He almost looks like a cross between the Joker and like Lady Deathstrike. It's kind of an unsettling character, I feel like, but it's a really memorable boss fight for me. I mean, pretty much like any boss fight at the top of the clock tower is going to be memorable, but this one in particular I thought was like really, really cool.
Yeah, that was good stuff. I like the some of the bigger like weird, like not even puzzly, but kind of set piecey fights. The Puppet Master was a good one, trying to figure out like with the equipment that I had at the time, to, like, because I did not have stuff on me that would be good for like arcing upwards and stopping him from throwing the puppet into the Iron Maiden before I got there and stuff like that. So it was a very interesting way to have to figure out how to handle that fight without being properly equipped for it, I guess. But that made it a lot of fun as well. I like a lot of the there are some set piece boss fights in this game that are a bit more obvious, like solve the puzzle and then the rest of it's kind of trivial, more or less. But they're still fun. I still like them.
I think that and this probably makes sense, but like I think that the two fights against like Dimitri and Dario, who are like the Dark Lord candidates, those ones are pretty like, they're okay. Those are probably, I would say, like the weakest two fights. Yeah, but like I don't know, they're just like regular guys. It kind of makes sense in the context of the story as well. Let's talk about Death. I think that this is like an awesome fight against Death, like one of my favorites in the series. Although Portrait of Ruin might be up there with my favorite Death fight. And I don't know, actually. We should almost do a Death ranking.
Unfortunately, the Portrait one is more fresh in my mind right now. So
yeah. What was a sick Death fight too, actually, was Lament of Innocence on the PlayStation. That was a cool fight. Oh, yeah. But yeah, this one is really, really good. I really love Death as just like that Ridley-esque, like, not the final boss, but like the second final boss that you have to go through in every Castlevania game. I love that tradition.
Just about always there.
Oh, like, and actually, like in Portrait of Ruin specifically, I really like that Death is like the character and has like kind of some ulterior motives. I think he just kind of shows up in this game, which is fine. Which is fine.
I like the way that he shows up halfway through Portrait and was like, wait,
who are you? What are you doing here? Yeah.
You're not who I thought I was murdering.
Yeah. It's this fight is great. It's challenging, as most Death fights I think are. This fight is really good because it has the like that weird attack where like the skulls come in on either side, or is that Portrait of Ruin? Maybe I'm mixing them up now too.
No, that was Dawn of Sorrow. When that finally hit near the end, I was over like up next to a wall, so I had nowhere to run.
Oh,
so I just had to item through it because I was stuck. But yeah, it was just like, man, if I did not have enough healing items in my inventory right now, I would just have to redo this entire fight.
Oh, yeah, that stinks. Because that hits unbelievably hard. Yep. It's just like a really quality Death fight.
Yeah, it was
I
pretty
actually
cool.
think that the death fight is probably like maybe the best fight in the game. I do have to say, I do really love the fight against Soma/Dracula, which you can only do in Julius mode, which is very very cool as well because it's just kind of cool. Like, anytime you get to fight Dracula, it's just like hell yeah, I'm fighting Dracula. This is awesome. Before we get to Julius mode, really quickly, I also want to say I think that the music is like consistently really good in this game.
Oh yeah.
A few standout tracks. We kind of talked about a few of them already, but like it's hard not to say like the Lost Village theme, which is like basically like the main theme of this game. It's a standout for me just because you hear it like a lot. But every time I'm there talking to Yoko or Hammer, I'm like humming away like do 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 do. I think the Demon Guest House has that creepy. I don't know what instrument it is, but it sounds like really creepy. I really love that, and I already shouted out the Dark Chapel, so I want to do something else. The Wizardry Lab, I think, has really, really cool music. Is like pretty much the music for everything in this game is, like I said, consistently awesome. But it's the little things like that matter, right? Like we've been kind of complaining about Metroid not having quality music for the last couple 2D games. Like this is the kind of music that you want to see in like a classic, a good Metroidvania. So had to shout out that as well.
Yeah, a big part of why I fell headfirst into this collection so hard is because I'm currently working on the score for a game called Revenant's Reach that is very kind of PS1 era Castlevania inspired. It plays more like something closer to like Strider 2 in that way, but aesthetically there's a lot of Castlevania in there for sure. And I've been studying a lot of these soundtracks very carefully. I mean, I was kind of doing that anyway, just because I like them a lot and I'm weird that way. But I've just been like immersing myself in them as much as I'm able lately, and just soaking in it. So like I sat down yesterday and to listen to the Dawn of Sorrow soundtrack all the way through twice, just while I was working or whatever. Sorry, I'm adjusting microphone levels over here. Just to like really soak in that without any of the other context or the other sounds happening in the game or anything, just to kind of like, I don't know, hear it uninterrupted, unmitigated or whatever.
The soundtrack, I'm gonna look at it differently now, but I mean, it's a killer soundtrack. You can't deny it. I want to talk about Julius mode. Really
Talk to me about the Orange Julius.
I think that, and so every like Metroidvania 2D Castlevania game has like an additional mode where you can play as somebody. You can play as Richter and Symphony of the Night. You can play as Richter again in Portrait of Ruin. You play as Maxim in Harmony of Dissonance, and you play as Julius in Aria of Sorrow. I think, however, Dawn of Sorrow, and this is again one of the reasons that puts Dawn of Sorrow just over Aria of Sorrow for me, is I think that the post game player mode in this game is the best of any game, including Symphony of the Night, like all of them. I think that this Julius mode is like the best because you can play as not only Julius, you play as Julius, and it's just like an awesome old school Castlevania. There's no souls, there's no gimmicks. It's just like your whip going to one against all these monsters. You also have the ability almost right away to switch from playing from Julius to switch to playing as Yoko, very much similarly to how Portrait of Ruin works.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So you can play as Yoko, you can use your magic and stuff like that, and then like halfway through the game, you get the ability to also play as Alucard, and like not Genya Arikado, but you're playing as Alucard. So like he's got his Symphony of the Night sprite. I'm just listen. I'm low hanging fruit. I'm a sucker. Like Alucard, this guy is just so cool.
You're
like,
not immune to propaganda.
I love playing as Alucard. So like I love just like the classic, like the whip feel of Julius, and then the classic 2D sub weapons. Yoko's really cool for certain enemies as well because her magic is super powerful, and like Alucard is just Alucard. Like you've got the bat, you've got the fireballs, you've got this like it's so awesome, and it's just like it completely changes the vibe of the game too because you're not concerned about souls. You're just like playing this awesome Castlevania game. So it's like probably the most different. Even though it's obviously the same game, same bosses, stuff like that, it's very different to me, or the most different in terms of like what you're actually doing playing the game. And it's just got like a lot of really, really cool stuff that you can do. And I don't know. There's something just like absolutely amazing about like fighting Soma Cruz as Julius and then switching to fighting Dracula as Alucard at the end. Like it's just like it's good stuff, you know. It's low hanging fruit, but it's good stuff.
No, that does sound rad. I am really, really looking forward to going through and revisiting this game through those other modes. And it's the same with the other ones as well. Before I started Portrait of Ruin, I took a look because it's the only one that I actually have, or of the DS trilogy. It's the only one that I have like an actual physical copy of. So I thought like, okay, I might want to play this on an actual DS as opposed to a big Hulk Steam Deck. So I tried it there for a bit, and long story short, I ended up not because it was crashing and this sounds dumb, but like after looking at the Steam Deck for the entirety of Dawn of Sorrow, looking at the really blurry motion on the DS Lite screen afterwards for Portrait was like giving me a headache a little bit. But anyway, it had all of those other modes unlocked. Whoever owned it before me had like 500% cleared like save files already that had all the other stuff on there. So I'm like, if I ever want a shortcut to checking out those modes, I guess that's there. But yeah, no, when I saw Julius mode unlocked at the end of Dawn of Sorrow, I was very interested in that as well because I like, going through Symphony as Richter is rad. It's very different than saying going through Rondo as Maria or whatever. Where it's just like a much less mean version of that game. But I mean, yeah, Castlevania has always had a history of having swappable characters and stuff going back to at least Akamojo Densetsu, but Dracula's Curse. Regarding the character switching thing, another comparison to Portrait of Ruin as he's swapping back and forth between two different people, but in Dawn of Sorrow, I don't know if this is because they have more buttons to work with on the face than they did with the GBA for Aria, but having a dedicated button to swap between two different like preset loadouts basically on the fly is brilliant. That's such a fantastic and incredibly useful way to basically give you like a shift button a little bit, to expand the usability of the rest of your controls, and the verbs that you have available at any given moment are really rad. But yeah, anyway, going through and playing as a completely different character with a completely different, like, almost like a different subgenre of action game sounds really rad. It's very different than, like the old Resident Evils where, going through as Hunk and Tofu or whatever after the fact, where it's like, it's still kind of the same game. It's just silly and strange now. Whereas this is very, very different in a way that has me really, really excited to go back to that next time around when I, reach my next rainy day. I want to go play one of these more easily consumable than I thought Castlevanias that people have been telling me to do for years.
It's just like a cool. It makes me feel like I want to play old school Castlevania, even though I'm not good enough to play old school Castlevania. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just a cool way to go about that. I kind of had. You brought up a great point about the ability to switch souls. Actually, I totally forgot about that. That wasn't available in Aria of Sorrow. That's a really good. It's like a really nice option for this game.
Yeah, it's super.
I was kind of thinking, and I was like, after playing this game, I was like, you know what? This game would be such a cool basis to base the next 2D Metroid off of, like Metroid 6. Because I was like, Samus has now gotten her Metroid suit, right? And we know Metroids can suck up, the life force out of whatever. I was like, man, if they did like kind of a modernized version of the soul system in Metroid 6, where like you got your Metroid suit, you could suck up an enemy's abilities or something like that. Like, tell me that wouldn't be awesome.
I don't know, actually. I could see that going either way, because the other part of a system like this, and something that I think is also very similar to Symphony, is you end up with kind of a loot table problem where you have too many, maybe not like actually too many, but it can begin to feel like too many different like weapons and stuff for the player, depending on what you're going for. Like, I think Symphony of the Night has a bazillion different weapons in there, and my first run through the game, I ended up somehow lucking out and getting the chrysogram to drop really, really early, which made the rest of that game a cakewalk.
What? Seriously? Holy cow. Okay.
It's like the second or third time I was running through. I think it's a library, right? Just kill something and it drops. I'm like, what is this? And then I press the button. It's just a flurry of blades all around me. I'm like, oh.
You got that luck stat, like, right up there, I guess.
I don't know, man. I don't remember what happened there, but the point is, like, there are a million different things that can drop that all have different, move sets and like animation speeds and styles of animations. You know, you have weapons that you swing in an arc overhead, weapons that go like straight out forward in a stabbing motion. You have weapons that you swing like in a horizontal kind of slashing thing. You have weapons that arc that will hit multiple times, depending on the size of the enemy sprite that they're going through. There's a lot of different ways to inflict damage at the push of a button through this game, right? Whether that's ranged or melee or magic, whatever. Whereas Metroid, it's pretty much beams and missiles, and then you have a couple other things like, you know, shine sparking and screw attacks and stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. But I wonder if you might start running into, like, if you give some kind of offensive soul or ability or whatever to every single enemy that you could possibly run into, every like fodder enemy, every weird little bug thing that you run into in a Metroid, I wonder if there's a risk of just overloading it with too much stuff. I mean, they're definitely, you end up getting too many different like weapons and elements that are like again, like that doesn't make the game bad anymore. It just means the things themselves are no longer as iconic or whatever. And that might not matter. That might be fine. I just think that's one of the small kind of differences between the way that the like actual Metroid franchise has kept its lane apart from the way that the search action-y Castlevanias have gone. Like it's kind of, I feel like the Castlevanias and the games that are drawing from them are going really, really heavy into like that kind of dungeon crawler style, like action RPG. Like let's just give you as many different options as possible so that you can really customize your class. Isn't really the right word necessarily, but your play style, the kind of way that you want to interact with the game. Whereas Metroid tends to be a lot more about iconographic imagery a little bit, I think. You know, like Metroid has the ice beam, the super missile, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Proper nouns, I guess.
You're not wrong. Like as you're talking, I'm trying to think of like how you can do that. I might be. And like, well, because I was thinking like, well, yeah, because like I'm playing the new Zelda game right now, and there's a lot of echoes, and that's really my only complaint about the game right now.
That game seems like huge.
Yeah, like finding the echo that you need can be a little bit challenging sometimes, particularly if it's not one that you use a lot. So like I can see that as well. Like, and I was thinking about how you could do it, and like, and my answer was like, I don't know, maybe if you got let's just call a soul from this enemy in Metroid, you could have a stat boost or whatever. But like Metroid doesn't really do stat boost, so I don't know. I would let other people maybe smarter than me kind of figure that. I think there's something there though. I think you could use the Metroid suit to like zap up powers or zap up, I don't know, something.
There's probably something you could do. Yeah.
Like maybe it's like something like, I don't know, maybe it does introduce stats. Maybe it's like you take less damage from mechanical enemies, or you take more damage. I don't know, something like that. But I thought it was a cool idea, like something to play around with and see, because I really want that Metroid suit to come back in Metroid 6. And I was like, well, how do we use it? Like what do we do to really kind of, I guess, use the powers of a Metroid? And I'm seeing Soma Cruz just like absorb someone's soul, and I was like, man, that could be something. That could be maybe something that we could try.
Yeah, you could make it some kind of, like weird body horror, like DNA fusion thing. I feel like thematically you've already got a little bit of that going on with Dread anyway. Every time you beat a boss in that game, the way that she kind of just like absorbs all the juice out of it and then does that super blast on the...
Now we're talking.
The enemy fights and all that stuff. Yeah, anyway, I think thematically there's probably something that a Mercury Steam, for example, could probably do there.
So yeah, Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow, one of my favorite Metroidvanias, man. I'm glad that you got to play this game.
Me too.
And like I'm hopefully if any of you listeners out there are on the fence about this game, we hopefully convince you to give it a shot. You know, we talk about the Metroidvania genre all the time, and I think a lot of people sleep on the Vania portion of that Metroidvania. So like, if you've got a couple you know, like there are 6 incredible Metroidvanias right now on Nintendo Switch, and you can get them for like $50. And they're if that, yeah. And each one of them is it's probably worth 50. I would say it's worth $50. So go out of your way to next time these are on sale or whatever, track them down because they are a blast. And there's a ton of cool stuff going on in all of these games. But Dawn of Sorrow, I do have to say, is probably my favorite of the bunch, which is why I wanted to do this show about Dawn of Sorrow. So I'm really glad, Andrew, that you got to play it for the first time. And
yeah, me too.
And yeah, I experienced that. I'd probably still gonna be like more of that old like Metroidvania Castlevania guy. Probably fair. You're still more of that old school Castlevania guy, but I've been dipping out into the like older Castlevanias as well, and just like really kind of getting an appreciation for like the older style, like the series just in general. It's just I don't know. Like I love Metroid, but Castlevania is not far behind. Like I really love this series, and this is one of the crown jewels of the series. So check it out if you haven't.
Yeah, I'm very glad that I now finally have. I think it's also worth noting, if there's anyone else out there who, like me, had been kind of putting that off for a while, each of these 3 games you can get through in like 6 to 8 hours. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously you could speed run them way faster than that, but like for your first time through, it's if you just want to get through it and see the, you know, true ending or whatever, they're not a gigantic commitment, and they go down very smooth.
They do
also,
indeed.
there's so much else there right below that surface if you want to get into it too.
Well, there you go. Well, yeah. Andrew, thanks for hanging out with me, man. This is cool to talk about Castlevania and a little bit of Metroid too. I really appreciate you taking some time, man. If we wanted to check you out over on socials, over any projects that you got going on, where can we go ahead and do that, my friend?
Yeah, Elmore.zone over on Blue Sky. I think Andy mentioned my portfolio earlier is Elmore.design. And then I am working on some big ol' YouTube essay projects over under the name Mythic Resonance. I should have some updates for you soon there, hopefully.
Fingers crossed.
Capturing a medically alarming amount of footage lately. Pray for my hard drive space, but, you know, should be fun.
Rock on. All right. Well, yeah, definitely... don't be a stranger. We might have to get a few more episodes of Castlevania under our belt here. And in fact, I'm pretty sure, speaking of Castlevania, I'm pretty sure we're reuniting on the Flashback 64 podcast at some point. I don't know, like the next year or something like that.
I have no. It'll be I don't know 95 by the time they get to that, but we'll be there.
We'll be there. We'll
be ready.
I'll just spoil it. I was gonna say, like, I don't want to spoil the game, and I was like, what are you talking about? You already just said Castlevania. Yeah,
you just
we're gonna be talking about Castlevania Legacy of Darkness, which I have actually not played, but I just
nice.
I just went to the crime store and downloaded the ROM for it. That's what we need next is the like Castlevania 3D collection, like Lament, Curse of Darkness, and give us Legacy of Darkness too. That's what we really need.
All the games that people think that they don't like because they didn't play them.
Yeah. Anyway. I remember, like, not to go on a tangent, I remember playing some of those 3D Castlevanias on the PS2, and I was like, these are awesome. How are we not talking about these? So let's bring them to Switch, Konami. Make it happen.
Maybe fix the like FOV angle. Other than that, though, they're basically perfect. It's fine.
You could probably fix, there's a couple quality of life things you could maybe do to help us out there. But
speaking of which, I really was surprised they didn't take a chance to fix the translation, the English translation on these DS games. That was a shocker.
Yeah, I kind of love that they didn't, though. You know,
well, yeah, for sure, it's charming, but
it's charming. You're right, though. There's some things where you're like, okay, cool,
like, all right, yeah, you turned Haunted Castle into a good video game, but you didn't like fix a couple type. Okay, that's fine, whatever. Anyway,
yeah, you do you, man. I
let it be what it is.
It's kind of like at this point, like if you ever port Symphony of the Night, you can't replace like the voice acting in that. Like you can't. And do it.
They did for the because I think the one that's in the currently available collection is the one from PSP, right?
I don't know. And by the way, bring Symphony of the Night to the Switch. Like, what are we doing?
Oh, it's not on there, is it?
It's not on the Switch. Yeah. No, I mean that's just outrageous.
So the Requiem collection, then, is that just
It's just PlayStation.
Is that at least on like Steam or something? Or I mean, whatever.
I think it's everything but Switch actually.
It's strange.
Yeah, it's really weird. So Konami, come on, man.
Yeah,
let's get it together.
That collection's weird because it's Symphony and Rondo, but it's the versions that are included as bonus games inside the Dracula X Chronicles or whatever PSP game, which is a like polygonal remake of Rondo of Blood, and inside that it has slightly retranslated versions of Rondo of Blood and Symphony of Light in there, and those are the versions that are in the Requiem collection. So they're not the classic Jeremy Blaustein Miserable Pile of Secrets deliveries.
That's just good stuff. That's good stuff.
Yeah. Yes,
all right.
Anyway,
okay, let's jam out of here. We are going to get on out of here. So thank you everyone for checking us out. Of course, if you are looking for a Metroid podcast, you got one that does it every single week. We're the only weekly Metroid podcast on this internet, and for very good reason. Doing a weekly Metroid show is a crazy endeavor. I ask myself that all the time, but we're the only ones doing it, so go and like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Show us a little bit of love, if you want to leave a review, recommend. If you got a Metroid fan in your life, tell them about the Omega Metroid podcast. Tell them about OmegaMetroid.com. We got tons of maps and guides and news and stuff going on over on that site. So if you're a Metroid fan, man, you can get lost in OmegaMetroid.com. So check that out. Give us a follow wherever you are over on social, at Spiteri316, at Elmore.zone, at Omega Metroid Pod. And if you really want to take your Omega Metroid experience to the next level, check us out over on Patreon, patreon.com/SPNet. Go and sign up. You get a bonus show. We got the Great Metroid I'm literally about to record the Great Metroid Area Ranking as soon as we are done this, so check that out. And that, my friends, is going to do it for us. So until next week, everybody, take care.
But enough talk. Have at thee.